Now we're going to bring up John Daniel Law. He's a dealer and operates JDS Seeds over in Orrville, Ohio, which is near Worcester, kind of northeast central Ohio, and been working together for 25 years or so.
Almost 30.
Yeah, something like that. So, and we just asked John to share a lot of the observations he's seen over the years and some of the principles that he follows.
I'm honored to be here. I always came to listen to all these smart guys with all the experience, and they asked me to come and talk. So I don't know how this will go, but we'll give it a try. This is the day which the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. So we're glad you came, and we want to share some things we learned over the years and share some opportunities for next year. And I was asked to talk a little bit about calcium, some of the things I've observed, and then I'm just going to tell some stories. So that's our logo. There's a picture of our seed warehouse, or part of it. So it was established in '86. We supply seeds to your local community from many suppliers, both conventional and organic. So seed suppliers include Seed Consultants, Albert Lee Seed with Blue River and Viking Brands, Fowler Seed Marketing, Kennel Seeds, DKG Seeds, and a few local growers. And you're probably familiar with some of those. So one thing we do every year is we do this driving tour, and that's become a feature that the farmers really enjoy. And we visit some of our best farms. So I enjoy teaching about organic farming management and helping new organic farmers become successful. So I'm just sharing some of these ideas with you. I've been a dealer since 1998. I enjoy doing farm tours, visiting some of the best farms in our area, learning how farmers manage tillage, fertility, crop rotation, plant diseases, and insects. And it's just been a real privilege to work with the group of farmers we have around us here. We have some of the best organic farmers anywhere, I think. I guess the highest comment, I called one of the farmers this fall and talked with him. And he was in the combine, and I said, "How's the corn doing?" He said, "Right now the monitor says 342. Now that's not the average for the field. We know that. But it's just amazed me the progress we have made in our area. And a lot of it I attribute to agri-energy and the biologicals. But here's what my way of approaching it. I start with the soil test, including a water soluble test. This is so important, the water soluble test. Review the soil test with the customer. Determine the nutrients needed to attain desired levels. If available, and I have a preference there, use manures to apply additional nutrients needed. Do not use excessive amounts, which will create an imbalance. Some people apply manures for nitrogen. Don't do that. Use it to supply, but generally potassium is what you need most. And supply manure to balance that. And then you may need to use additional nutrients. No manures, use high calcium lime, gypsum, rock phosphates, bone meal, potassium sulfate, boron, zinc, manganese, iron, copper is needed. And it's a given we use biologicals. I didn't add that to that. So I was asked to talk a little bit about calcium. And well, there's a lot of stuff about calcium. It is important. It's the most important element in soil health. It is responsible for being the pivotal mineral around which all others function to produce growth energy for plant life and health. Crops benefit by the calcium supplied by the lime, not by control of the pH. So a lot of people just look at pH and use calcium or lime to adjust that. I look at base saturation. Calcium is the major mineral that determines soil reserve energy. Plants live off the energy released as plant food elements and compounds interact in the soil against calcium in themselves. Calcium feeds soil bacteria. Bacteria will come to life and start participating as key factors in soil building and energy release. This bacterial action builds biologic carbons. So Dr. Albrecht was hired by the University of Missouri to study rhizobium inoculants. And one of the things he discovered was that you have to have calcium for them to live. And that's true for all the biology. Calcium is very important there. So calcium is key in proper soil structure. We've heard about this, that it has a mellowing effect. Calcium in conjunction with carbon and water creates a carbon dioxide bubbling reaction that opens up the soil structure for oxygen. Calcium contributes to both structural and chemical reactions in the soil and plant, just as in the human or animal. Calcium's presence along the cell walls thickens and strengthens to make more resistance to disease and insects. And calcium is overall the best tranquilizer nature ever supplied. This is something astounding. When I first came across this idea, but I've experienced that myself on my farm. Calcium releases the mineral energy of your food during digestion. Example, a cow eating alfalfa hay with a 16 Brix level of sugar requires only 10 to 12 pounds of grain to give 100 pounds of milk. While a cow eating alfalfa hay with a 7 Brix level of sugar requires at least 30 pounds of grain to give 100 pounds of milk. What a difference. And the most profitable dairymen are the ones that understand the importance of high quality forages. So that comes from one of my reference books, Biologic Ionization in Farming and Soil Management by Dr. A.F. Beddoe. Dr. Beddoe was a student of Kerry Reams. So some of the things he looks at are a little different, more from an electrical standpoint. So I want to make a few comments on gypsum. Gypsum works as an amendment, soil conditioner, and as a fertilizer. Gypsum improves compacted soil, especially when used with MT17. And the parenthesis is mine. Gypsum prevents crusting of soil and aids seed emergence. I have observed, had a farmer call me and he said, I planted alfalfa in this 30-acre field, 10 acres in each side came up beautiful. 10 acres in the middle. You must have sold me some bad seed. It didn't grow. Nothing there. Well, it's the same variety, same lot number. I said, I'm sure there was no bad seed there. Let's dig into it. Let's see what happened. We pulled soil samples in the 3 pieces The outside 2, we had a base saturation around 70, the middle 150. Base saturation of calcium. So I said, put some lime on. And he seeded it that summer then. It was spring seeding originally, and it caught just like the other. Remember, for legumes, you have to have calcium for them to germinate. That is why today many of the companies will put a seed coating on their alfalfa. You will get a lot more seeds if your calcium is good, a lot more plants, but you get a lot more plants with coated seed if it's not. Gypsum helps plant absorb plant nutrients. Gypsum improves water use efficiency. Gypsum improves soil structure, especially when used with MT17. Gypsum helps stabilize soil organic matter. Gypsum increases value of organic amendments. This is an important one. Gypsum makes magnesium non-toxic. We have many soils with high magnesium levels. Properly managed, we have soils that are 12 to 14% magnesium, but then we run into soils that have 25%. And those are problem soils until we make some correction. Gypsum goes a long way. Gypsum decreases loss of fertilizer nitrogen to the air, improves fruit quality and prevents some diseases, helps their soils to flourish, decreases bulk density of the soil, making it fluffier, reduces water runoff and erosion. Gypsum makes slightly wet soils easier to till. Gypsum prevents waterlogging of soil. Gypsum corrects subsoil acidity. Gypsum increases the toxic effect of sodium chloride, salinity. And I just was working some soil tests, to do some soil tests. We'd like to stay below 1.5 parts per million. He had some that were soils that were 2.5, approaching 3 parts per million sodium. So I just made a point of writing down and saying he really needs to put some gypsum on there to decrease that effect. It comes from manures. It's a dairy farm, lots of manure. You feed the cattle salt, the salt comes through the manure. So that information is in the Ideal Soil version 2.0 handbook for the new agriculture. He's got more in there. There's more things in there. That's an awful lot of things that gypsum can do for you. So now I find there's a lot of confusion on the role of lime and gypsum. We'll discuss that a little bit. Lime and gypsum are both calcium amendments, but have very different properties. Lime is calcium carbonate, has 2 positive charges, and will attach to the soil colloid, which has a negative charge. This will raise soil pH and increase calcium base saturation. It is released slowly over time. Apply as indicated on a soil test. Do not over apply. And be a little careful with layer manure. There's 300 pounds of lime equivalent to each ton of layer manure. And I've been running into some soil tests over 85% base saturation calcium. The highest one was 92.5. That's a problem. And it's not a balance. So that's challenging. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. Calcium has a positive charge. Sulfur has a negative charge. Gypsum has a neutral electrical charge and is very soluble. It will not raise soil pH or increase calcium base saturation. 500 pounds of gypsum per acre annually will supply 115 pounds soluble calcium and 90 pounds sulfur. This will go a long way towards supplying adequate amounts of these essential nutrients to plants. That is why one of the reasons I like to use gypsum. We just increase the amount of calcium that's available to that plant. And people look at a soil test and say, I have all this calcium, why do I need gypsum? But again, we're trying to supply those nutrients. Typically, I see even in soil tests that are 75 to 80% base saturation calcium, I see around 200 pounds of water-soluble calcium. We'd like to see 400 to 500 pounds. So we're not there, but we can get a lot closer with 500 pounds of gypsum. When you get to 400 to 500 pounds of water-soluble calcium, weed pressure just diminishes. Life becomes easier, and your crops will do well. So I'm going to pause a moment here. If you have any questions at this point, because I'm going to change gears here shortly. Go ahead.
What type of gypsum are you using? Mine product?
Yes.
And that's not all available the first year. It takes 5 years to develop.
It is very soluble. Most of that is available. And if you want to use something that's almost preferred to have some of it carry over, but if you want your soil test and you put on 500 pounds of gypsum in a dry year, you added 115 pounds of calcium there. In a dry year, you may end up with 30, maybe 35 pounds of water-soluble calcium. In a wet year, you're down to 10, 15 pounds. So we keep applying it. And some people have this bit about, we want the pelletized gypsum because it's immediately available because it's finer grind. And I'm like, this stuff disappears so rapidly. I'm not sure you want the fine. A little coarser material, have some of it hang around a little longer, and it will break down. Now, that's my thoughts. We can argue that. I'm not wanting to get in an argument, but that's my observation. Yes.
Could you speak to municipal line from water treatment plants? Where does that fall in the spectrum of calcium?
Repeat the question. I didn't catch all of it.
City line, municipal line from power plant.
Well, there's one thing about that. Remember, we talked about the electrical charges here. What happens when you use lime to pull negative charges from the water? There's no energy left. It's neutral. Now, it may give you calcium, but certainly doesn't give you sulfur. I have a term for that, and it's spent lime. The energy has been used up. And remember, calcium is about energy. Yes.
When you apply lime, do you apply your manure with your lime at the same time, with your biology, or?
I'm certainly not opposed to that, but I'll assure you it doesn't always get done.
So if you could, you would? If you could apply it, you would.
I don't know. I never practiced that myself. And some of it has to do with the time of year that you're dealing with things. There's another problem. When we apply manure, we put it on the surface and then we plow it down. And lime should always be put on top of the plowed surface because it's going to work down. It's a heavy mineral. It will not rise up in the soil. But it'll meet phosphorus that's coming up. So I should probably continue on. I have a few more slides I want to show you, and you can ask questions later. So I want to talk about growing your own nitrogen with rotation and cover crops. And that's a oat and pea mix. Look at the nodules on those peas. And that's a clover ryegrass. I think it's Italian ryegrass mix. We'll just move on. Here are two red clovers. The farmer that bought that seed from me sent me those. He always liked that sunset variety. One year I couldn't get enough because germination was poor. We had to use other. 9 inches versus 18 inches. And he said he got 9 round bales an acre off of stubble hay after wheat. With the sunset, he got 3 off of the other. He said that was really expensive clover because it didn't perform. When you're using clover, and it's one of the best things you can do as a cover crop, just frost seed it into your wheat. I have one customer that bought 80 bags last year. He also told me he didn't have a field that didn't yield 200 bushels. They're all above that, organic corn. So the more biomass you can turn under, the higher the yield of that crop. So these are 4010 forage peas on June 1st, about that tall. 2 ton of dry matter at 22% protein equal 140 pounds of nitrogen if plowed down as green manure. An additional 60 to 80 pounds can be supplied by nodules on the roots. In addition, this can supply 20 pounds of phosphorus and 100 pounds of potassium. Those numbers are rounded up off, but just to give you an idea. If planted by April 15, they should be ready to plow down by May 20th or 25th, sometime in there. And actually, we're planting them much earlier than we did to begin with. We were afraid to. The key is to plant them about 3 inches deep if you plant early. So the 4010 peas is a nitrogen social book. Oh my. Oh my. Wow. So Ender, P-inoculant, and mycoseed treat were applied at planting. Now, it's just a cover crop. Why would you put mycoseed treat on? It is your nitrogen source. Let's do a good job there. Don't take shortcuts. With nodules like this, you should have 100 to 150 pounds of nitrogen per acre available. And growers are growing 180, 190 bushel corn after plowing down peas. Typically, that may have been after soybeans. Maybe it was after a corn crop. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. We did a lot of the 4010s, but we transitioned to the Austrian winter peas. And they'll supply over 200 units of nitrogen if plowed down with that much biomass. This is critical if you are growing corn after corn in an organic system. And we have people that do, because they're growing corn solids, they don't want to go 20 miles to haul that. So they grow 3 years alfalfa, then 3 years of corn. But always have that cover crop ahead of that next year corn. This year, we averaged, we had a silage plot on the farm with third year corn. The high yield was 30.5 tons. So look at the nodules, the earthworms and the biomass there. The root mass and soil structure. Growers are growing 250 bushel corn and 30-ton corn solids. The nitrogen's coming from those peas. It's amazing. Just really want to make people aware of what they can do. Now, the critical point is to get it broken down rapidly. But we have dug down, plowed in late May, late July, dug down trying to find residue, and you can hardly find anything. It's all broken down. So here's an example of what we can do. On this soil test, it's high fertility level, but it's still low in water-soluble calcium. And that's the red bar right there. It was low in manganese and boron. Pretty much everything else was pretty good on there. What happens when these are supplied? So I happened to be at that farm the day he cultivated, and he only cultivated it one time. Did a nice job. Field was clean. He's a good farmer. Doesn't have a lot of weed pressure. But this was an alfalfa grass hay field that had dairy manure and poultry litter plowed down. And again, he plowed all that biomass down. 600 pounds of gypsum per acre applied on the surface at planting, along with mica seed treat applied to the seed. 30.1 ton per acre corn solids. We took the scales down, weighed his wagon, measured it, and it didn't take it all, because that was pretty good corn. So he had some left over, and I said, I want to come back and check the grain yield on that. So it was 225 bushel corn at 21% moisture. So same field, where are the weeds? This is why a balanced soil with good fertility levels is so important. The one cultivation took care of the early emerging weeds, and the gypsum suppressed weed germination after that. So I'd been helping him with soil recommendations for 12 to 15 years prior, and look where he is today. It is gratifying to me to see the farmers I work with succeed like this. This drives. I like to work with young people that are getting started, and that's a good feeling if they're successful. Why use in-furrow starter fertilizer? And we're doing some test plots, and we've kind of standardized this. So we pretty much use it for everyone. We're not trying to manipulate a lot of things in the starter fertilizer. We add manures, we add gypsum, we add lime prior. We want to make sure there's adequate nutrients there for the crop. So through the years, we've just basically used this standard. And I've got to say, thanks to Reggie, Reggie had worked this concept up, and I've done it so many years, and I didn't know till recently one of the reasons why it works so well. of city gallon of Dramo fish in there, which reduces the salt pH right in that seed fur and helps make nutrients more available. Reggie's got the paper on it. Interesting. No starter, with starter. What a difference that can make. What a difference. So 15 years ago, Gary and I started working with these starter programs. And I'm not sure whether you see the numbers there or not. But I'll go on here. So over those 3 years, there was a 23.2 bushel average yield increase with 2.2% lower moisture. So now let's talk a little bit about managing cover crops, and then we'll get into more yield comparison. He's plowing down the Austrian winter peas there. This shows the tractor and the height of the peas. So we get the cleanest fields and highest yields by plowing down the cover crops. And that farm, he had actually wasn't ever going to use a plow again. He'd been using a rototiller, tilling his field. He tilled in clover that big. What a beautiful seed that made. But he called me and said, John, you sold me bad seed. It's not growing. It's rotten. So I said, I'll be right up. We'll take a look at that. And I said, oh, you're breaking down all that residue. Anywhere you get in contact with the seed, it's causing the seed to rot. Oh. He just liked to use that tiller. Next year, he did it again. He called me again. And I told him the same thing. Gave him some seed to replant. The first year, he had 220 bushels of corn even after he replanted. Because he had all that biomass and energy to grow the crop. Well, the third year, he did it again. And he told me, I believe you now, John. I said, I think it's time you get a plow and get that biomass turned under and plant into a clean zone. Now they're selling plows, importing them from Europe, filling a container ship with broken down plows, and they put them together and assemble them here. And they're selling plows. I just thought that was a neat story. So apply residues. This allows us to sequester all the nutrients in the cover crop, letting it break down rapidly and supply these nutrients for the growing crop. As much as 200 pounds N, 15 pounds P, 60 pounds K can be available. And after looking at what Derek had to show, I don't know what all else we did. I don't have any proof of it, but there's a lot of good stuff happening out there. It is important that you have a plow that can handle all the residue and cover it cleanly. Plows with fernland bottoms work very well. After plowing, do not let the soil get dry and cloddy before doing a shallow tillage pass. You want to stop moisture loss. You know, we get these years, you plow, every year I see somebody just leave that for a week or two. And when they want to work it down, it is dried out, hard and cloudy. And besides that, they don't have good tills to start with. What a mess, and you're never going to grow a wheat-free crop in something like that. Do shallow tillage only 2 to 3 inches deep. The soil structure underneath the till layer will stay intact with cracks, earthworm holes, decaying roots, allowing the soil to breathe. A smooth, level seedbed helps to do a good job with the tine weeder in early cultivation. That's how Grandpa did it, isn't it? I think so. Apply 500 pounds of gypsum per acre at the last tillage pass or after planting. This will reduce crusting. When the soil crusts, you do not have good gas exchange. CO2 and methane levels will rise and trigger the germination of weed seeds, especially foxtail. So I'm going to have to move along here. Again, we're using that same program, just a picture of Johnny Baller's plot, or cornfield. Johnny is an Amishman, farms his horses. Very, very little compaction and very, very few weeds. Soybean fields that you don't see weeds sticking out of the top of. And some of you can attest to that. You've been on the farm. So this was a dry summer. The picture I showed you there was in late July when we were doing our farm tour. At that time, I would have thought he'd have 220, 30, 40 bushel corn. This is what he ended up with. But it wasn't a failure, but it was certainly less than we'd hoped. We'll move on. This is where we did our fertilizer trials with and without. So 20.3 bushel, 19.8 bushel. Again, we go back 15 years ago, we were seeing that 23 bushel. We're still at those numbers with the starter. So Trent Troyer organic starter fertilizer trial, 15.35 bushel, 15.72 bushel. We tweaked it a little bit with other things, but we're still seeing that same thing. And a lot of that's biology. And these are organic farms that have been using these things. One thing I've observed after using them for 5 years, their yield plateau keeps rising and rising. And 10 years later, these guys that were growing 180 bushel corn are growing 230, 40 bushel corn. A lot of good things happening in their soil. So, this was a yield comparison trial. You can look at that in your handout. I'm just going to skip over this. I want to move on to some of the other things we're doing. There's a Blue River 29 DC5 soybeans with the starter program. And in the spring, he drilled rye, then interplanted soybeans into that rye in 30-inch rows. And he hadn't touched that field. He said that cut 4 passes with a cultivator or whatever. The rye, and I want to talk a little bit about this because it's important you understand. Usually a lot of guys plant their beans in late May. Doesn't work well with rye. Today we're planting those beans if we interplant with rye, late April, early May, last week in April, first week of May. Rye will grow a lot more rapidly when it's cool, and the weeds aren't growing very fast then. So it gives you that edge. And this is the things the growers taught me to some degree. Reggie brought the idea to our tour, winter meeting. We talked about it. And I told guys, try 10 acres. Try a little. Don't do the whole farm. I don't want you to lose your farm. But if it works, well, and it's working. We do probably thousands of acres today. I know that Scott Myers, Woodland Acres Farms, and was his 2 years ago. He said he probably had 400 or 500 acres of beans like that. He averaged 65 bushel. And he was not cultivating. He was not. A few of the fields, he has a zapper. A few of the fields, he said, he had to zap the headlands. He'd keep it from weed seeds getting mature and dropping seed, or weed plants getting mature and dropping seed. So I just will continue here. This was actually, he rents my farm presently. My help was gone. I had to make some changes. So I am working with agri-energy, have been, enjoy that. So I'm just farming through other people. But that's just showing how clean they were at harvest. So in conclusion, to grow healthy, vigorous, organic crops, start with a plan. And I've heard the saying, failure to plan is planning to fail. So start with a plan. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. And I've found in life, as you go through life, all sorts of opportunities open up for you. If you want to move forward with something, don't be afraid to ask questions. Get yourself a coach, a mentor, someone who has experience to help you be successful. This can be a supplier. Some people look at suppliers, oh, he's just going to sell me something. This can be a supplier. He's probably more familiar with his products than anyone else, and he will probably be pleased to help you. Buy product from a reputable source. Agri-energy can help farmers be successful for a long time and have developed excellent programs. Scout your fields and crops often. Observe what is happening in the field. If you encounter insect or disease problems, ask for help. There are many more products available than there were even a few years ago. And today it is not necessary to lose a crop to a pest if it is seen in time. Challenge yourself to be a little better each year. Encourage others. If you are successful, help others be successful. Here's an important statement. Farming is an important work. It is. Everybody needs to eat. Many people are depending on you to do it well. May God bless your efforts. Have a good year. With some parting thoughts. He who works his land will have abundant food, but the one who chases fantasies will have his fill of poverty. Any questions? I left my contact information there.
When you're drilling your rye in the spring, how do you get what you fill the rye with? How much work you got?
Explain the spring and rye.
Okay. We plant the rye in the spring. Often the same day, we plant the beans into that. Our best successes are where we use a starter fertilizer to get those beans up quickly and stay ahead of the rye, or at least with the rye. We use a drill typically to plant the rye. Some people have tried to broadcast. That way it's not in rows, but broadcasting it and then tilling it in some way is not quite uniform depth and so on. You actually will need to use more seed. So typically they drill it.
And I think the other part is planting cereal rye, winter rye in the spring,
yes,
it doesn't get very dull. Yeah.
no, it doesn't vernalize. It's not going to get ahead. It only gets this tall. Like that. But if it's there first, your weeds have a hard time getting through that. It really helps to suppress it. We have a few more tricks up our sleeve. And don't do this without asking someone for the correct rates. Don't think you remembered it. Because we don't want to harm your crop. But when the rye and the beans are about this tall, we spray them with a gallon of boron, pint of manganese, and a gallon of dram 1 fish. We overload the rye and the weeds with boron and manganese and stunt them.
What's the seed rate of rye?
Typically we use 2 bushel. Some people have gone 150 pounds, but typically we use 2 bushel if you have good seed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we follow. I like to follow with a foliar later on at early bloom. Then we put a complete program on. But when we're doing it early, we're just trying to stunt the rye and the weeds.
Remember, grass cannot handle high rates of boron as well as lignans. So,
Don't ever do that on corn. You will stunt the corn.
okay, well, thank you, John, for sharing. I'll be around all day. Please ask him questions. Before we break for lunch, I would ask that we give a little blessing here. Lord, we thank you for this chance to be here together today and to just explore your world and learn more about your world. And Lord, we're so blessed to be able to work with your soil that you provided and plants that you created to help grow and use that all in the work that we do. Lord, we thank you for this meal we're about to partake and for the hands that have prepared that. And Lord, we please ask for safe travels for everyone on the way home. Thank you, Lord. Okay, I think the lunch ready back there. So you can head on back, and there's round tables in the back. You can sit at those tables and eat lunch, or you can bring it back up here, your choice. And then please visit with our various vendors here throughout the lunch hour.